The greatest thing since sliced bread. You've all heard the saying, the greatest thing since sliced bread. But do you know what is so great about it? Quite simply, it was a marketing phenomenon. The story is a classic case study, which everyone interested in innovation should know. Driven by the convergence of various inventions in just 3 years, starting from virtually nothing, sales grew so fast that by 1933, 80% of all the bread bought in the United States was sliced. To be pedantic, we should call it mechanically pre-sliced bread, since most loaves were already sliced manually with a bread knife in the kitchen. This success story is about far more than just slicing bread. In fact, it took a century and more of continuing innovation across a range of products for pre-sliced bread to become an overnight sensation. But let's start with our hero, Otto Frederick Rivera from Iowa. He first filed a patent for loaf slicing a machine back in 1912. He even sold his jewelry business to fund its development. Despite being laid low with kidney disease and his workshop burning down, destroying all his tools and prototypes, he persevered. Eventually, the world's first mechanically sliced bread went on sale to the public on July the 7th, 1928. It wasn't an immediate success. At first, Otto met resistance from bakers who thought that sliced bread would quickly go stale. However, in the same year, 1928, another innovation came to the rescue. The Continental Bakery of New York introduced Wonder Bread, an unsliced loaf, unsliced, but wrapped in a waxed paper to conserve freshness. However, even when they wrapped the sliced bread in wax paper, the sales still didn't take off. One final factor was needed to make it a success. This was the electric pop-up toaster invented by Charles P. Strite. I should note that Strite's toaster wasn't the first on the market. General Electric had introduced their electric toaster for the home market a decade earlier in 1909. Westinghouse followed in 1914, but these had no impact on pre-sliced bread. During World War I, Strite worked in a factory where each day in the cafeteria he saw bread burning in these toasters. The problem was that people would take their eyes off the bread as it toasted. His elegant and ingenious solution, a pop-up toaster which didn't require human attention. Very clever. The Toastmaster was his invention, a spring-loaded automatic pop-up toaster with a variable timer so you could alter the amount of toasting. It hit the shops in 1926. Sliced bread in wax paper linked with the Toastmaster was a marriage made in capitalist heaven. Using Rivera's machine, sliced Wonder Bread, it was all in production by 1930. Its market penetration remains legendary. As I've mentioned, 80% of all the bread sold in the United States was pre-sliced and wrapped in this waxed paper. But even that isn't the whole story. No innovation just pops into existence. Sliced bread was actually the culmination of a century of technological innovation. It needed electricity in the home, then the invention of nichrome filaments. It needed the pop-up toaster and also a unified size loaf of bread, and of course the wax wrapping. But the most important success factor was timing. So let's look at the timeline. We sidestepped the time it took for the widespread installation of electricity into the home, because without that, nothing would happen. We may start in 1905 when Albert Marsh produced nichrome, the filament wire used in toasters. In 1909, General Electric introduced its first home electric toaster. Then in 1912, Rivera entered the scene, experimenting with his machine to pre-slice bread. In 1914, Westinghouse introduced an electric toaster from the home. None of these had any impact. In 1917, fire destroyed Rivera's factory, his prototype and his blueprints. Then in 1919, along came Charles Strite, inventing his automatic pop-up toaster. Waters Genter Company then in 1921 marketed Strite's toaster, but only to restaurants. In 1926, however, the company Toastmaster began selling its pop-up toasters to the public. In 1928, mechanically sliced bread went on sale, but with limited success. And in the same year, 1928, Wonder Bread, wrapped but unsliced, went on sale. It took until 1930 for Wonder Bread to begin selling wrapped pre-sliced bread. 1930. In 1932, toaster sales skyrocketed, thanks to the standardized size of pre-sliced bread and no worries about staleness. By 1933, 80% of all the bread sold in the US was pre-sliced and wax wrapped. And, as they say, the rest is history.